Okay, welcome to The Doctors Are In. I am your host tonight, Dr. Stephen E. Gardner, and we here with Dr. Thomas Brown, and a few of our other colleagues will join us shortly. And we just want to greet you. We know that we're living in some very turbulent times. We're living in some times that really challenge the way we think. We have been talking about some things that have been pertinent to people of color. And we have kept our conversation kind of centered around religion and economics and social constructs as it relates to people from the African diaspora and the effects and the impact of that. Tonight, we're going to continue our discussion regarding uh, Christian TV in the 60s, in the 70s, and in the 80s. Did it have an impact upon the perception of Christianity? Did it create a standard that did not necessarily project the right one or project one that was culturally competent or culturally sensitive? Anyway, we're going to talk about that and we're going to get more deeper into it when all of our um, uh, uh, esteemed colleagues join us. But since we have Dr. Brown on tonight, Dr. Brown, as we are getting ready for our topic tonight and get ready for this dialogue, what is it that you'd like to share with our listening audience so that they can be prepped? I remember you did say something the other day. We was talking about Juneteenth, but has Juneteenth just gone and went? I mean, it just seemed like it was such a uproar or such an excitement about it, but it just now that the day is gone, where do we go from here?
Well, June 19th, for our audience to know, that is the birthday of my wife. So that's not going to go anywhere other than the fact I celebrate with my wife on June the 10th. And also the June the 10th is a what I would say an experience of history that is the past is coming to the present. And I think one thing that I recognize because of the Florida incident that took place down there just these past 3 or 4 days, how all the people, I've got some colleagues who are working in the what we call the search and rescue initiative. I see how people join together in spite of color,
Mm-hmm.
in spite of religion, in spite of their fears, working in the behest of all of the persons who are, in fact, still not identified. They are dealing with what we call a Surfside down in Miami. And I've got some colleagues down there who are the professionals working on those sites.
Mm-hmm.
So with you coming out of the military, I found out and learned it is in crisis and in bleeding circumstances that all of a sudden people's blood is red and there is something deep within their spirit that makes them look beyond what we call the cultural differences such as black, white, brown, and yellow. And in that experience, does it mean that we can only come together in crisis, not realizing that deep in our psychic, or let's put it another way, I'll leave that word psychic for Dr. Hyman, deep in our soul, I am presently studying the cognitive aspects of the soul, not the cognitive aspects of the mind, nor the cognitive aspects of the physical body. I'm trying to put a handle on cognitizing our soul. In the East, the word for me is atma. In Africa, the word for me is ryoism. But how do you cognitize the soul which is in the image of God? Now, if I was asked, and I've asked my students, would you describe the image of God to me? And they look at me like my head's on fire. Would you tell me what color the image is? Would you tell me, does the image have a head and two eyes, a mouth, a nose, and a shoulder? Is the image of God male or female? Is the image of God walking and talking? Define the image of God. Now, when I throw that at them, all I'm trying to do is get them to think. Because we think in regard to the mental aspects of our, quote, the brain. We think in regard to the physical aspects of our body. But have we ever thought in the aspects cognitively? Have we cognized our soul, or has our soul cognized us? In my present predicament, when I say my predicament, I'm in some discussions with, I've been on radio all day today from one thing to another about the African who came to America as slaves. Many of our children, grandchildren, many of us are suffering from, again, what I call the Down syndrome. That's just me throwing it away. Disorder. The disorder is because we're carrying all of that slave experience still in our psychic. And there are many of us, as you know, Dr. Gardner, you've been in the war, and you come out of the war, but does the war come out of you?
Well,
and see, I'm working with too many brothers who have committed suicide already, where the war was so much in them. And what is war? It's killing. So when they commit suicide, that war is in them, because then they kill themselves. And of course, the terminology is post-traumatic stress disorder. I am of the opinion, and I said it on the radio, that many of us out of our religion is suffering from a post-traumatic stress disorder out of our slave experience. Now, the only person I can trust to talk about that is my sister. And I throw that question because I am convinced, when I have listened to persons, as you know, on my radio show, trying to inform me that it's best to be a slave than be free. How do you define freedom when your experiences have been oppression? Now, you asked me to make my opening statement. My sister is here.
welcome, Dr. Hyman. We're glad.
Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. You know, we had the second COVID shot today.
Oh, my goodness. I noticed. Did you get an appetite?
No. I was knocked out. But
Okay.
He called me. I was like, huh? What?
That COVID shot will do it. It'll
Yes,
knock
sir.
you out.
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Hungry. That's all. I had the other shot. First shot I had, I was hungry. The second shot I had, I was super hungry.
Oh, wow. Not
Wow.
me. I was just knocked out.
Oh, yeah. It's happened to a lot of people that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, you know, we're going to talk about Christian television in the 70s and 80s. I mean, that's where we're going to go. But I wanted to get an opening statement from Dr. Brown, and he gave us a litany of things to really think about, especially as it relates to the trauma that's been generational from our slavery and our oppression.
Mm-hmm.
And he indicated that even our religious experiences, even our religious expression, there's a trauma that flows through the psychic energy of our worship and our practice and so on and so forth. And I want to know, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What do you say, Dr. Hyman? I mean, what are your contributing thoughts in this opening segment?
I don't know with respect to our worship about that, because I only know one thing. You know, so I have no comparative point. But I do believe and agree with Dr. Brown that in our innate ability, historically, to adapt, that is something that is put in the human condition, but it seemed to be a little extra for us. And our ability to adapt to a very heinous environment, very heinous treatment, the shock of it. I mean, can you imagine? And we have to use our imaginations. Can you imagine? At one point, you're home in your native land with your own people, your tribe, your whatever. You think you're going somewhere, and now you're put on these ships, tween decks, as they call them. They're like sardines, and just excrement all over the place. I mean, packed like animals. And those who made it out of that, even the seasickness and all of that, everything completely opposite to what they know, completely opposite to the way they are wired, socialized, trained, all of that. Then to come here to foreigners, what Genesis 10 would call Gentiles, and endure the kind of treatment that, they didn't even have no frame of reference for it. So just the shock treatment alone, or the shock value alone, and then I guess repeated, if you will, perpetual exposure to stress, oppression, injustice, violence, as Dr. Brown talks about very often. Just like any other part of you scientifically, will begin to adapt to the environment so that the species can survive. I believe our adaptation caused some changes in our molecular structure and our DNA. And so I do believe that as we remained in these systems, even with the lie and the delusion that we have been free, or we are, quote, equal, or we have arrived, it's a delusion, that there are traces of post-traumatic slave or stress syndrome. There are traces of depressive activity or anxiety and stuff. Years ago, when we started being assessed by the mental health system, a disproportionate number of Blacks were labeled as paranoid schizophrenics. And the paranoia was not irrational. It was real, but we were still labeled. So even in all of the systems, the mental health, religious system, when we go in there in a minute, the health system, the financial system, the economic system, the educational system, the social system, everything where we are restricted and put on the bottom, we have adapted to all of that. To the extent I believe that adaptation now has become pathological. And so it is that pathology for us is normal, but it's really pathological because it's so far off of the center of who we are as an African and Afro-Asiatic, Afro, whatever, because we mix with everything, people. And so, yes, I believe in our expression of Christian worship or Muslim worship, and our expression, what we believe, why we believe it. I believe that it is because of that same bamboozlement and that same pathology. It allows us to remain passively hopeful that God, particularly the white one on the cross with that blonde hair and stuff, that he will come and rescue us by and by. And so religion has become our opiate. It is both our strength and how we have survived, but it is also our weakness and how it has allowed us to remain pathologically passive, very often delusional, and many times in a psychologically and spiritually vegetative state.
Okay, so I mean, I remember one of the forgot who it was, a well-known oppressive individual. Um, Religion is the opiate of the people. Who said that?
Karl Marx.
Karl
I
Marx.
believe it was my
You know, religion is the opiate of the people. And for Karl Marx to say that, that means he understood something about the human condition and their need to depend upon something um, um, other, higher, you know, religious, spiritual, transcendent. And
I think,
go ahead.
Dr. Gardner, it wasn't that deep. He saw religion as an enterprise that kept people under control because he was able to see how religion interacted with people's fears and their different cultural expressions. And I wanted to go back to Hyman. Dr. Hyman, it was about, probably you were just a little girl back in the early 60s. I was meeting with some sisters who were very good in music, and they gave me the greatest education I ever had, and that education was, they said, they would call me Tommy. Now, music in the black experience here in America is grieving music because we play the music in the minor key. They said, but when we're in Africa, our music is played in the major key. And then they went on to say that the Europeans learned the major keys from the Africans and the sound of the major keys, but here in America, we had to use the minor keys in our music to be able to survive. She said, but our music in the minor keys is our way of expressing our grief. Well, back in, about 10 years ago when I had to do the Mandela interview and stuff, I went to South Africa and found out what the major keys were. The sound is unbelievable. You can't even grieve in their sound.
Wow. So you're saying that the keys were more celebratory, and then we're using more.
The major keys are, you can call it celebratory, but the major keys is a more stronger freedom of manifesting your joy and pleasure. The minor keys gives you a way to ease your pain in grief. Now, I'd like my bishop to tell me something about that.
Well, I mean, you can go to the, yeah. We're gonna let, I'm gonna let her on the hook just a little bit, but you can go to the funeral home and you hear right there.
It's the minor keys.
They're minor keys. You hear at the wake, or whatever. It's always a minor key. We don't come off.
And we'll shout in the minor key.
Well. All right, back to you, Dr. Hyman, and then we're going to get into our topic tonight. Any thoughts on the minor major keys or anything we've said thus far?
I can see what Dr. Brown is talking about. The minor keys tend to be broody, moody. In fact, if you think about it, when we play what is called prophetic music, now I don't know whether that's ours or not, but when we play prophetic music, like worship music, when we get ready to go forth in prophecy or deliverance or anything like that, we will tell people to go, well, I will tell people to go to a minor key, particularly E flat minor. We call one of the prophetic keys. There are some what we call minor happy and major sad pairings in music that kind of work, but I think it's a fair assessment to say that many of the major keys, particularly your C's, if you think about it, old churches, when we used to sing those congregational kind of hymns, most of those were done in F and G major, because it was almost like a collective kind of thing. So I do think that there is a kind of broody gloominess. There's a song called "Losing My Religion," and I think that's in a minor key or something. It was digitally shifted to a major key. It was a minor key. So I think there's something to that. I can't say that particularly in traditional parts of Africa that I've heard much in a minor key. Most of it is in a major key. So I think even in that, as he said, it is cathartic for many of us. And it probably was adopted to some degree from Western culture. So yeah, I can definitely see that.
You mentioned the prophetic, having a certain sound, is the music that Benny Hinn plays in his background, is that in a minor key?
I don't know. Some of it is.
Okay. I mean, that's
some
interesting.
Of it is. I'm just thinking about some of it. Okay. But most of his stuff is so a lot of it is, some of it is, but most of his stuff is those kind of hymns, then sing my soul, how great thou art, so that people are focusing on the omniscience and the omnipotence of God while they go forth and do what they do.
Okay. Just thought I'd ask that question. I wasn't sure. Okay.
Yeah, I had to think about it. Yeah, some of it is. A lot of it is.
We introduced a topic the last time we were together, and we thank you, viewing audience, for bearing with us. And we missed it. We missed last week, but we're here this week, and we want to really stir your thinking along these lines. I've had some people that knew that I was going to talk about this, that we were going to talk about it rather, that said, hey, somebody just said they had a conversation about this the other day, and they were just talking about this with someone. And so here is a topic that we're working with. Did Christian television of the 70s and 80s construct a model that normalized the images, standards, and culture of white Christianity? The second question, was the culture of the African diaspora better off before the introduction of Christian television in America? And then thirdly, have we even questioned the origin of the perspectives and practices of contemporary Christianity? Now, these are some tough questions, but they are worth us looking at, because we need to see what was put in front of us. You said a word that we are adapting.
Yes.
And we have this adaptive nature. We are able to, we're able to matriculate in various aspects of society because we have been forced to have to, to measure up so we can be who we are as a people in our own culture, but we can be what we need to be in another culture because we've learned how to adapt. Could it be that our adaptation also took a halt, as it were, from our watching the Christian TV programming of the 70s and 80s? Now, you're shaking your head. Do you want me to go further or do you want to elaborate?
Go ahead.
Okay. One of the things that I noticed, and I mentioned this the last time, but it's worth noting that there was a phenomenon that happened in the 70s and 80s as it relates to a departure from mainline Christianity. There were a lot of people that were leaving mainline churches, and I'm speaking of people of color, that were going into other expressions that kind of mirrored what we see on the set of the churches, the set of the program, with what they saw on television. In other words, in the 60s, you did not see a fiberglass pulpit. You did not see flower arrangements.
That's right.
You know, you did not see any of the kind of things that you see purported either on the 700 Club or any of the kind of Christian programs, PTL or whatever that image that was put out there in terms of how to set things up. I see people of color adopted that model, and they got rid of their wood. They got rid of the table that said, "Do this in remembrance of me." They got rid of their wooden pulpits, and they began to mirror what they saw imaged and broadcasted on Christian television. Did you ever notice any of this kind of stuff? I'm just asking a question.
Yes, sir. I certainly did. I saw, as you said, particularly the way we set up our pulpits. I mean, even when we have wooden pulpits, we copied that from everything we got, we copied from white folks, pretty much everything. Okay. But as we, because we were buying many times, in the early or in the late 1800s up into the 60s and 70s, we were buying buildings that they vacated due to regentrification. So we would start moving in, they would start moving out. When we start moving in and maybe even trying to join their churches, they start moving out. That left buildings open for us. And so we bought their buildings with their images all over the stained glasses, their images on the fan, their images on murals, their images in Bibles and hymn books, their images were everywhere. So we inherited their shrines and we left their shrines up in many cases. So even when we had the wooden this and that and the communion table and all of that is European in its essence and its nature. But as with the emergence of Christian TV, again, that became our model. In fact, our model for just about everything, with the exception of our art form, the way we sing, the color in the voices, color that many of our white brothers in church or out of church put us in their bands and put us in their backgrounds to make a certain sound. They singing, getting all the millions, and we singing background. But we began to adopt more and adapt more of what we saw, because the pathology of it all, doctors, is that I'm trying to do this very gingerly, but I can't. The pathology of it all is they have been our model for everything. So when anything or anybody becomes your model for everything, including your worship, your practices, your building, your feng shui, any of it, it brought us on idolatry. So then whatever we saw, then that must be God. Whatever we saw, then that's what we're supposed to do. Whatever we experience, then that's the experience we're supposed to have. And so we moved even the authentic part that was very Black, our sound, our songs of How I Got Over, our singing of hymns, some of them ours, many of them not. But even the way we did them, the way we sounded, we sacrificed all of that for what we saw on TV. And we have tried to produce that ever since. And it's almost a lost art form, with the exception maybe of the dance. And the dance now has become for many of us recreation. It's just recreation, as they call them, praise breaks, and put them on YouTube, and everybody looks and studies the praise break and all of that. A lot of what we have done is it's just not even sacred. It's just not even sacred. And so we absolutely have adopted and adapted everything from our oppressor, as though they have a moratorium on what the human experience is in worship to its God.
So you agreeing that what has happened in the 70s and 80s, that what was projected, that has become normalized.
Yes.
And so thereby, we don't have a authentic expression if we are only mirroring the images that we saw. We talked about this, and we kind of go back and we kind of say it's funny sounding, but we go back from time to time and we began to talk about that one little clip that we saw on the Good Times.
Yes.
And maybe we need to just show that again. I don't have it queued up right now in front of me, but we need to show that again, but on Good Times, it was a show that came out when? Was it the 70s?
70s.
It came out in the 70s. And so, and I think one of the, and you that are watching, go ahead and Google this, where it was a segment on the Good Times where they, one of them had drew a Black Jesus, and he put the Black Jesus on the wall. And so the mama comes in and basically says, that, who put this up here? And so there was a conversation about a Black Jesus and a white Jesus. And the mama said, looking at this white Jesus, she says, this is the only Jesus that I know and that I love. Now, you can kind of take the humor inside of that, but the humor, you go beneath those layers, you look
Yes.
at a psychological trap that says the only image of Jesus that I know and love is blonde, is that which looks, that's white, blonde hair, and blue eyes. Now, some of our, non-melanized audience, and we have a lot of faithful white followers of our program who are woke, and they're not offended by that statement because
Right.
they're searchers of truth just like we are. But there are people that would hear that and they would say, does it really matter if the image of Jesus is white, blonde hair, and blue eyes? Why do we make a big deal about it? How do we respond to those who take an offense to us saying that the image of Jesus that's projected as white, blonde hair, and blue eyes is oppressive to people from the African diaspora, that suggests that the only person that they know and love and can trust is someone that looks like the colonizer? These are the kinds of things that we're trying to help people to grapple with, help people to pull apart. Why do I believe what I believe? Why have I accepted what I've accepted? And am I as really free as I think I am? Any of y'all want to respond to any of that?
Well, I've listened and I've learned. I like what I hear. When I say I like it, it is because I've heard it so much before. And I remember at the age of 18, my dad and Dr. King and his buddies were all together, and they made a statement, and my dad just grasped it. And this is 1958, 59. And here's what they said: we were the production slaves. We were the producers. And he said, son, and Dr. King, Ralph, and Andy, all of them, which I was fortunate to be around, said, yeah, and we have become the consumer slave. We are the consumer slave. And when you look at economics is basically three principles. What? Production, distribution, and consumption.
Mm-hmm.
We were the producer slaves, and I like Madam C.J. Walker. That sister produced a hair thing, and she had it going on, and had a distribution methodology, and this is based on economics and of capitalism. But as I was listening to you, Stephen, I was listening to Dr. Hyman, what kept jumping, she said, we adapted. That is the truth. Mm-hmm. And I would push her because I said, yeah, we adapted, and our adaptation was we were able to imitate them. We imitate very well. We imitate even so they like us. See, we make them look better than what they look like. We're great imitators. My dad showed me a dictionary, man, that he had that was in the 1800s. You know how they define Negroes? As imitators. Interesting, as imitators. And as you're speaking about this Christian television, religion is an enterprise. It's been an enterprise for whenever. It's a Catholic enterprise. It's a Jewish enterprise. It's an Islamic enterprise. It's a business to make money and have power. Now, you can BS, bring back stuff. I didn't say where I was. You can bring back stuff historically, and the reality was about power and money. And Christian TV, you call it normalizing enterprising is profiteering.
Mm-hmm.
Profiteering. And one would say, am I a socialist? The early church, before they became, quote, Christians, were communal. We don't want to address that. It was communal, and the word communism came out of that as an enterprise of economics. We are the consumer slave. We are very good in the enterprising, and all we're doing is copying them, and we're making money. But we're making money to our own destruction. It's not, to me, it's that deep. It's not that deep at all. Everything you have defined so eloquently, Steve, in your analogy is about money. What is profit? To gain the world and lose your soul. As I was looking at what happened in Miami, I'm going to say it. If you build a condo on sand, it's going to sink.
Wow.
It wasn't built on rocks. All up and down that coast, it's built on sand. And ultimately, water, wind, and sand cooperate.
No.
Now,
Wow.
I am not
I didn't see
happy
that
about
coming.
what happened to them. But the bottom line is, when they built those condos and knew they had structural problems, it was about what? Money.
Money.
And if we're going to have discussions, we cannot discuss anything without the aspects of money. Bottom line.
That's a good point. I mean, that's a good point. So that just gives a whole new twist on Christian television, you know, from the 70s
Money.
upward.
Christian television is money.
Because you can't even be on the airways unless what? Unless you pay to be there. You
You're
know,
That's
right.
right.
and then when you get there, then you have to appeal to your, you have to appeal to your audience to contribute to keep you on the air. And I'm not
But that
saying,
ain't all. Remember,
huh?
you can be on the air, but if there's no profits, you ain't going to be there long.
No, you're not gonna be there long.
And
so
economics, capitalism is what? What is capitalism? One word we know is supply and demand.
supply and demand.
And the other part we know, what profit do you make? How in the world, tell me how in this pandemic, for 1.5 years, billionaires made 400 times the money in our pandemic.
That's right.
Off of pandemic.
Okay.
That's
All
right. And we love a $1,400 stimulus check that they gave us to put back in their economy. And we're not even cognizant, many of us, that millionaires became billionaires and billionaires became trillionaires. They
And
have
don't pay tax,
benefited.
Simon.
Yes,
Okay.
sir. They have benefited. And we see even television, being on television, as having arrived. We see being on television as a huge achievement. I remember posting when I was going to the Word Network, the flyer or whatever it was that they gave us. And I mean, the congratulations poured in. And I got tired of, I just got tired of even responding. No congratulations is needed. I'm doing what I've been doing at that time for 38 years. It's nothing no different. It's just I'm going inside of somebody else's studio. And this is nothing to congratulate. So the whole perception about it.
The whole perception. The whole perception.
The whole perception about it is some celebrity status. I have finally arrived. My status has changed. It's the whole celebrity thing. And there's a delusion there for many of us, because even if we quote have arrived, we still don't have the same privilege. We still don't have the same rank. We still don't have the same rights. We still are not treated the same. And the fact that if you don't say a certain thing, preach a certain thing, do a certain thing, you're not going to be there long. So even in many cases like this, your content is owned. What you express that you believe is owned, or you're going to get punished and blackballed and thrown out the system, and you're going to lose your status and your money. So we're a long way from it's not even a semblance of what we say is biblical modeling the Christ movement. Wow. I won't call it biblical Christianity, because Christianity really ain't biblical.
Okay. All right, Dr. Brown.
All I can say on what she just said is ditto.
Okay. All right. So now here's the thing. All right. So In other words, I can only say so much.
That's right. Your mouth is owned.
Your mouth is on.
I don't care if God told you to say it. Your mouth is owned. Unless you utilize that system to get a certain momentum, to get to a certain place economically where you are strong enough to withstand them pulling the legs from under you, or if they are in your church, that you can sustain them walking off and leaving. Good example of that would be Crenshaw Christian Center. By the time the late great Apostle Frederick K.C. Price began to teach on racism, look how long they had been in that connection with the Hagans and all of this evangelical word of faith, and all of that very much mimicked or looked like those evangelicals. But as he got further and further in it, he began to see the racism in it. And of course, when he began to, and some of it was tempered, particularly for him, when he began to teach on racism and expose that in that system and in the church, many of those white constituents pulled away from him. By that time, he had a large enough congregation, large enough economic base to sustain itself on its own, and was able to keep on television, even to now, with his son taking over. But we got to look at, I'm just saying, even things that were said to me. Look, you better not say certain things, or you better not do this, or you better not side with this person because they'll blackball you, And I said to someone who was giving me counsel about being in that realm and being in that dimension, I said, to me, that's oppression. You're saying to me, if I don't act right, if they don't act right, I'm going to get beat or whipped or thrown off the planet. Are you kidding me? It's the same system, and we crave it. We want it. Our preachers want it. Our singers want it, because again, monkey see, monkey do.
Well,
Everything we think is God is look like our oppressors, act like our oppressors. We have to mimic and copy and duplicate everything. Even as Dr. Brown said, even doing their stuff, we be doing their stuff and doing it so well, they'll hire us to make them sound good, look good, do whatever, and we still getting pittance while they get millions. That system is still in place, and the church system is the bedrock of it. It's the bedrock of it, and we have no clue. We just going along, just copying and doing, and think that's God. And anytime any of us bring those things to light, gentlemen, then we are bastardized, we are persecuted, we are heretical, we are this, we are that. Because if it is the people's opiate, then they're gonna get mad when you take their crack.
okay. Wow. So I'm looking at some of the comments here. People are chiming in. And I'm just freedom costs. I see one comment here. I pray that we'll be brave. Freedom does cost. And see, look, as we have given, one of the reasons why we call ourselves the doctors, not only because we have legitimate doctor's degree in our field. I didn't pay for, none of us went to a paper mill and paid somebody a few $100 so I can put a doctor behind my, no, we have paid the price. So, but the reason why we call ourselves doctors is because we diagnose and we analyze and then we discuss DAD, like dad, DAD, diagnose, analyze, and discuss the things that impact people from the African diaspora.
Yes.
And let me say this, the things that impact us who are people of the African diaspora impact all of us, even non-melanized people.
That's right.
And so the truth that we're bringing out here is not to say, people say, well, we're bashing white folk, we're bashing the white system. Look, we're just trying to get folk to open up their eyes and see what you've taken for granted, and understand that a lot of the stuff that you've taken for granted is that you've accepted the hoodwink and never winked at it, never thought second about it, never questioned it. And so therefore, if you don't question your change, you stay bound.
Absolutely.
So my next question, and I guess, we got about 10 minutes.
Okay.
Because we started a few minutes later. But the next question that was raised, let me see if I can find it, is that, are people of African diaspora, will we be much better off before Christian television? In other words, did we lose our culture because of the influx, the drive, or let me put, as Dr. Brown, the economics of Christian TV in the 70s and 80s? Did we lose our culture along with moving and adapting to an image that we saw and the icons that we embraced and the style of worship that we began to allow to come in? Would we have been better off without it? I'm just asking as a question.
Well, it certainly is a hypothetical question, but I think we have enough evidence looking at the data, the practices over the long haul. We've all been here long enough to see it over the over the lifespan of the last 30, 40 years. Very, very much so. That is not to say that, again, in those times we were not doing European stuff. For instance, at my grandmother's Baptist church, we sang anthems. We had to sing. Our pastor required us to sing everything. We had to sing 4 or 5 types of music. It was mandatory. We had to do anthems. We had to do hymns. We had to do gospel music. We had to do congregational kinds of things, metered music and things like that, and Negro spiritual. And we were called, quote, the Silk Stocking Church, with all of the relics of the oppressor still up. Some of it's still up in there. All right. And this was the church our people founded 2 years after slavery, the abolition of slavery. So that's always been there. Our practice of Christianity, we learned from the slave masters. We ain't come here with that like that. We did not come here with that like that. Although we knew the biblical stories, we knew we did not come here like that. Okay. We are the origins of religion, and therefore cannot be merely reduced to paganistic and heathenistic. Other folks did that, calling the continent a whole continent, a third world country. All of that stuff is a construction of Europe, and we have drunk that Kool-Aid, Apostle. So for us, even taking the hymns, especially in Pentecost, we're gonna put to every hymn, we're gonna put that, that music that duplicates the heartbeat. It's soul. It's that soul. We're gonna put our spin on it. But even in the 70s and 80s, we now begin to throw that to the wind as though it was ignorant and inferior.
Wow.
And we changed our sound so that we are no longer congregational, singing songs that got us over, singing songs that were communal. I'm a soldier in the army of the Lord. That's a community. That's militant. If I die, let me die in the army of the Lord. What's the matter with Jesus? Y'all got a problem with Jesus? He all right. Those kinds of things. We begin to lose a lot of that for a more, quote, polished, Europeanized sound called praise and worship. And so we did away with, as you said, two people standing up on both sides of the communion table talking about testify, saints. We don't get to talk about how the Lord brought us over now. If we testify now, it's, I had a lump in the breast, the lump is gone, all the stuff we got from Christian TV, or how the Lord has prospered us and we got houses and cars and land. Not conversion, not my children's drug habits were broken. My son came home. All of that, for the most part, began to change, so that we are now a people that no longer have a sound. We don't have a sound. As the hymn says, the sound of saints on higher ground. We don't have triumph songs. We made it over songs. We're gonna make it through. I mean, we'll do Marvin Sapp. This why this blew up. Never would have made it without you. Those are kind of songs that you do when you're the oppressed and what have you, or when you have been made to believe you just an old dirty worm. That's their theology, worm theology, that God has cleaned up. And so our sound even it has gone, and we've adapted this whole praise and worship. And as I said before, even when we start new churches, we'll have 15 people in the church, and we'll have 7 of them on the praise and worship team with mics, because we got that model from off of TV. And so we have sold out everything, for the most part, that is authentically us. So to me, culturally, Dr. Brown has already said it. We gained the system because the church is part of the world. It fuels the world. We gained the world, but we lost as a people collectively our souls. We are no longer culturally, for the most part, African American with an African center. We are merely Americans who have thrown the core of who they are to the wind and have enmeshed it into a culture that is pathological, that is apathetic, that is arrogant, and that is full in and of itself of insurrection. Yes, sir, I think it's done us more damage than good.
Wow. Wow. Well, that we've been on here for an hour, and I've heard some very strong, very pointed comments about how images do impact us. And I'll say this, for years, when I was in church growing, a young kid going to church, and I saw that white Jesus on the back of that on the back of that fan, I didn't think anything different.
Me either.
And I grew up, I went to a Catholic school. And so we had mass every day. And when I go to the Baptist church on Sunday with my parents, then that fan.
Yes, it was the same image for me, Apostle, that I saw in the Catholic Church, with all of the statues, with the rosaries, with the pictures. This was, as Dr. Brown called it, Catholicism, Roman white Catholicism. It was the Roman Catholic Church, the crux and crucible of the Roman Empire. And I saw the same images there in the buildings of these Black Baptist folk. It was the same Jesus. So I didn't know no better either.
Wow. And we never think, well, why? Why this image matters? Because we all, and people have come, and psychologists have come to learn, and I know that you're psychologists, but people have come to know that, people like to see something that they can look up to. People like that, you get a refreshing feeling, and you kind of sense the refreshment when we saw Barack Obama become a president, whether you believe his politics or not. It brought a refreshing atmosphere across the nation, and others that have entered into certain roles and certain aspects of society that we can we can see our own image. We can see our own ethnicity. So image does matter. Image does matter. And so I think that as we begin to wrap up this segment, and we're going to wrap it up for tonight, and then I have an announcement to make. How can we get free? I mean, we can diagnose and dialogue and analyze, and discuss all we want. What is the pathway to liberation?
I'll give you a quick answer.
All right, sir. Let me listen. Say it.
I'll give you a quick one, so my doctor can tear it up. I want her to jump in. The question was asked. Well, the question was stated by somebody that emailed, freedom costs, and that is so true. The cost is unconditional love and sacrifice to serve, and we must do it not in the image of our psychic or in the image of our physical beingness, but in the image of the divine who created us.
Okay. All right.
Say it again, Brown. That was good.
Yeah.
Say it again.
He spit that out so quick.
Oh, see, I know she takes. The question was presented, freedom costs, and I'm responding that I say, yes, the cost is unconditional love and sacrifice. And we must discover our image in the divine. And once we discover or come to the realization that I'm in the image of God, the cost of freedom is unconditional love and sacrifice.
Wow. Okay. That is a tall glass of water right there.
It's a tall order. We're going to, I would say, we're going to have to see what that actually looks like. Our concept of unconditional love and unconditional positive regard is an offshoot of Western psychology, but we may need to reconstruct it. We may need to recontextualize it. What does that look like? Is it an unconditional love or what we call agape, which we have been told is the God kind of love? That's completely false, because the Greek word agape is also used with respect to loving sin. So that's not true. It is a social kind of love. So does that look, Dr. Brown, like we accept our injustice and the injustice makers and the injustice givers and the injustice inflictors? We accept them unconditionally. Does that look like we are to simply write off in a mode of forgiveness our oppressors and let God deal with them? Or is this unconditional love one that is directed towards ourselves? Is it a reconstruction of our self-concept, our self-value, our self-image? If it indeed is that, then it is worth our work. And you shall know the truth.
And the truth shall make.
Truth that you know will begin to make you. This is a forced process. It is an interactive process. Not the truth shall let you free or poof, set you free. It shall make you. It shall mold you. It shall deconstruct and reconstruct you into what God intended for you to be. So if we're looking at this unconditional love and sacrifice as something that we're going to first apply to us individually and collectively as a people, then to me that follows the Christ model.
That's what I'm saying.
Yes, sir.
That's what I'm saying. Just add another piece. Once we discover that our image is not just our flesh and mind, but our image is our divineness that makes us powerful.
Absolutely. We are going to have to reimagine both our humanity, because it has been marred, and
I agree.
our divinity, because it has been diminished and reduced. So we're going to have to see ourselves as fully human and fully divine.
That's true.
Part of that involves the healing of how we perceive ourselves and how we perceive our God.
Wow. Well, we got loads of comments. Can you?
I think that Dr. Brown had something. What you had, Dr. Brown? You gonna
Well,
say
my
something?
comment is everything we talk about, I'm struggling as we speak with, I have a charter school. Steve knows, Dr. Gardner knows about it, and we're in a battle. We've been in operation for 16, 17 years, and we are fighting that thing that we have got to deal with the conflicting miseducation of not letting our young people. We need to let our young people and our parents know the true history and understand that they are in a systemic racist society, and the history has got to be told the truth. And the churches has got to do the same thing.
Absolutely. We cannot continue to perpetuate our own inferiority and perpetuate our own pathology by practicing and preaching and behaving like those who gave us the religion to practice and force it upon us in the first place.
Okay. One of our comments, and then we're going to, I'll make an announcement. We're going to close out for the night. Says, the question is, what do we do? She said, start a movement. It's time. We are rising up. People are waking up and realize they have been tricked by the trickster.
My.
Thank you, Jackie White. Okay. What else we got in here? My wife said, thank you, Mrs. Gardner. Dr. Kathy Kelly Gardner. She chimed in. She says, we bought
into. We've been trying to get her up here.
I know. She probably gonna hit me in the head with a skillet when I get off. But anyway, that's okay. But she said,
we are nonviolent.
We're nonviolent. So she said, we bought into white Christianity and their expression for the sake of acceptance.
Amen to that.
My.
For the sake of acceptance.
For the sake of acceptance. Affirmation and acceptance. And within our own tribe that we have ascended and arrived.
Wow.
Absolutely.
So,
for the sake of acceptance, that's heavy.
For the sake of acceptance, which means that somebody else said something that reflects that too. Something very similar. And they said, oh, this is in response to seeing a white Jesus, that because we were already third and fourth generation in having our culture stripped away.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like our culture is being stripped away over and over and over again. And so thereby, the only thing we have left to look forward to is what is offered to us. And we don't feel good about what we are. So we have to accept. I want to be accepted. I want to be in the in crowd. Remember that term in
the in crowd.
The in crowd.
Mm-hmm.
And so the in crowd is
that is good.
Religion, is gotten into, how we do things, from a spiritual / religious point of view. I want to be accepted. That means I have a not a stepchild mentality, but in some cases that people stepchilds are treated like second-class family members.
Mm-hmm.
They're not given the full rights and the full status because you were not born blood. I mean, and so, so it's like, do we have anything that we can draw from to offer? Do we have an image? Dr. Brown brought about this image of God, that we've got to reconcile the image of God and reconcile who we are, and then model that before the world.
That's the sacrifice we've got to make. We have to be willing to sacrifice and educate and stop making excuses for what we're not doing, what we all know how to do. Sacrifice means going forward, and I use the whole ideology, we've got to be civil disobedient to a system that has oppressed us, and at the same time, as Dr. Hyman said, we must be committed to uniting ourselves with the truth. For when we unite with the truth, it makes us free.
Okay.
That's it, powerful. Unite with the truth. Unite with it.
Unite with
That's
the truth.
powerful.
Okay.
Gentlemen, since we love the Bible so good, I want to just read a little scripture, if I may, sirs, that may explain a little something. It's out of Romans. Chapter 1. I want to start. Hold on. I don't like these little Bible things because you can't get but one verse at a time, and this needs more than that. Here we go. Romans 1:21. For when they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile and their foolish hearts were darkened. Let me keep reading. This is good. Verse 21 says, they changed the glory of an incorruptible or an invisible God into an image made like corruptible man, to birds, angels, four-footed beasts, and creeping things. And so we wonder, it's right here. Therefore, God gave them up over into their sinful desires, the desires of their hearts, he gave them over to sexual impurity, for the degrading of their bodies one with another, and they exchanged the truth of God for a lie, and worshiped and served created things rather than the Creator, who is praised forever. Amen.
Wow.
That's what happened.
That's what happened. Clearly, that's what happened.
Well, let's just say it this way. That is what's happening.
So now it's not.
Continues, yes, sir.
It is.
That's why we're here, with all kind of lewdness and lasciviousness and wantonness, no standards, no boundaries, no values, no mores. That's how we got here, worshiping an image. They turned the image of the incorruptible, invisible God into an image, and it is an image-driven religion. And for this cause, God turned them over to their own lust, and we are now it.
So, are you saying that we have embraced their lust and made their lust our lust?
I'm saying when we did it, we adopted it, and we took their image and worshiped it all over the globe, worshiped it as God, and we reduced the worship of God to the worship of a man, a human, that which was created, we too now have been turned over to our lust, and we have copied and mimicked the way that we should do that. Yes, sir.
Man, I'm trying to wrap this up. You guys keep blowing me away. Look.
Okay, I'm done.
We're gonna let that be the closing thought. Next week on the Doctors Are In. Our new starting time will be 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. For those who are East Coast and so on, that are watching, we'll start an hour later, 9 o'clock. For those who are West Coast and those who are watching, we'll start an hour later, which will be 6 o'clock. So I wanted to make that announcement. I think we need to kind of, I think we finished the whole Christian TV imagery thing. We've done some adequate things with that. We can come back to that at another time. But this image of God thing and what you shared there in that last chapter, and people have taken scriptures to try to oppress us and suppress us and make us line up a certain way, slaves, love your master and all this other kinds of stuff. And then we are coming back right off of July the 4th, Independence Day. Maybe we can have a conversation about that.
I think we should.
Let's next Tuesday, let's open up this whole, let's open the door for having a dialogue, analysis, and discussion on Independence Day. Now,
yes,
we just
we'll
said
call it our
Juneteenth.
Independence Day edition.
The Independence Day edition. Okay, that's good. All right. So we're going to put that out there. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your comments, everyone. We love you. The Doctors Are In. We'll see you next Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time and 6 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. God bless.